1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times. Before the Empire.
What is up, everybody? Christopher Stolle back with another Journal of the Jedi, and I'm proud to say I've got a panel with me this time. Returning to Journal of the Jedi and breaking the fourth wall entertainment, Mr. Joe Cahill.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Glad to be back.
Also a regular for War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Make sure you go check them out. Great podcast. I should know. I've been friends with them since the beginning, so, you know, nothing but success and love. And, of course, making her debut to the podcasting world and Journal of the Jedi, Miss Wren. Wren, how you doing?
Pretty good. Glad to be here.
Wren is here to prove to us that she is more knowledgeable in Star Wars than either of us, and I have money saying that she is.
We'll see. She's already got the challenge of 77 viewership.
There you go. Well, here's the first thing, the biggest news that I've got for Star Wars. The rumor going around that it looks like it's going to be Lars Middleton taking on the role of the live-action Grand Admiral Thrawn in the upcoming Ashoka show on Disney Plus. Guys, what do you think? I mean, is this something that's reliable? It's being reported by like the Nerdist and comicbook.com, and I mean, normally.
So far, even the source I've seen says it's still just a rumor. Since nobody else has picked up on it, I'm staying pretty calm about it and still keeping my fingers crossed for Jason Isaacs.
Nice. That's actually not one I've seen before. What about you, Wren? Does it excite you to know that Lars may take on the role? I mean, he did do the voice in Rebels.
I think it would be really interesting. You know, I mean, being a great voice actor is one thing for a character, but to actually play the character physically, especially something like Thrawn, because he has such this cold, staring presence.
No, you're absolutely right on that. And I mean, even from the Legends, I mean, the character has never changed.
Right, and one reason I thought Jason Isaacs with that stare of disapproval he's always been able to make. He's so good.
Yeah, but the thing about Thrawn, at least from my imaginations, like reading the Thrawn trilogies and Legends and the new Thrawn books now, I've always taken Thrawn as, although he is cold as ice, he's personable. So with Jason Isaac, I don't see him as an approachable person.
Hey, now, come on. He was approachable in Star Trek. Discovery. I thought he was a great mirror universer pretending to be a regular guy.
Well, true. Okay, Discovery.
Discovery. That was a great role for him. But, you know, he's got some good roles out there where he's been very personable.
Maybe I just haven't seen him because like the first two roles that pop into my mind for him, and I think they would be good for like an angry Thrawn, but not necessarily for, you know, Thrawn studying the paintings of cultures to find their weaknesses. The first two that come to mind is the British colonel in The Patriot, and of course Draco Malfoy's father in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yes. But you know, he was very personable with his buddies that had the nice mark.
True, that is true. Well, if this rumor turns around to be true, let's jump into speculatory areas, because it's been also rumored of Robert Downey Jr. Being brought on, and when it's confirmed that Robert Downey's coming onto the shows, what's not confirmed is the role, and everybody pretty much thought that, you know, Robert Downey was going to be doing Thrawn. Well, if they do go with Lars, for example, then what role do you guys think RDJ is going to be doing? Maybe Captain Palion?
See, I don't see him fitting for a Palion type character either. I actually don't picture RDJ in Star Wars. I don't see it.
I mean, we had Woody Harrelson in Star Wars, and that was something I never thought I'd see.
We don't speak of Solo. We decided that on War of the Stars last night. We do not speak of Solo.
Hated that much, huh? Go ahead, Wren. What were you about to say?
It's something hard to figure because a lot of what we know about these actors and actresses is what they have already produced, but that might not be everything that they're capable of producing. So maybe they showed up at audition and did a fantastic job for a character, but in our own minds, it's really hard to imagine them being that character, especially with costuming and makeup and everything else that goes on into creating a character. Um, you know, they could probably very easily be transformed into something we've never would dream of seeing them being.
AKA Daniel Craig is a stormtrooper.
Well, I mean, to be fair, none of us envisioned Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man.
Right.
No,
And
I saw that. When they said that, I said Tony Stark right there. I knew that was going to work.
Well, I don't mean just the look wise. I mean, at that time when we thought of RDJ, we thought of, you know, a complete mess, basically Charlie Sheen. You know, none of us really expected him to really be able to take on the role as he did. And I think he surprised everybody, obviously, with Iron.
He did a fantastic job.
So, I mean, it's not impossible for him to find a way to get into whatever role it is that he does. The only thing I'll agree with you, like I pitched Captain Palian, but I don't necessarily see RDJ as a villain, as Sith or a bad guy. I see him more Republic, or maybe somebody who's not affiliated. I don't want to say bounty hunter, but non-affiliated.
Or I'd have to go back through the books, a general or high-ranking Republic official.
That's what I mean. Like, I could see him on the good guy side, or indifferent, the gray area between.
I don't recall a lot of gray area in the original trilogy of Thrawn.
Not really, no. But I mean, just in general, just the Star Wars universe in general. I mean, he could wind up being a politician of a neutral planet, and wind up only being on like one episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be the easiest thing I see happening.
Yeah. So.
I definitely don't see him as Thrawn.
Well, I mean, you pitched Oscar Isaac. Jason Isaac. Wrong Isaac, sorry. That's right. Oscar's already been in a Star Wars thing. What about you, Wren? Who would be your first pick for Thrawn if you had the voice to say, "Hey, Disney, use this"?
Oh, that's a hard one. I would think in order to make Thrawn really believable, especially for those iconic shots of him just standing there on the bridge of a ship in complete uniform, his hands behind his back, and just that glare requires such minute little twinges of acting, you know what I mean, in order to sell that emotional draw at that moment. I'm trying to think who has already done something like that. It's such a unusual acting style. Like you don't see that many characters in movies that do that have that kind of momentary presence that really just kind of, I mean, once you see that, you know exactly who that is.
Right.
Where else has that existed? I definitely could see like Malfoy's dad.
Yeah, Jason Isaac.
Because there were some moments where he had that kind of that glare, but those moments I think were overacted for Thrawn.
Right, and I think what I like about Jason Isaacs, not just as Malfoy, but was back to the Patriot, the aristocratic. He could pull off that aristocrat that you know Thrawn is from his own race. And that's how he's described so much through the book. You know, he's aloof, but he's willing to teach and train and show you.
Right.
And I see Jason Isaacs being, doing an aristocrat very well.
Well, whenever I've thought of Thrawn, especially now with the idea of a live action, I've got two choices. One is very off the wall, and the other one I'll give more of an explanation behind. The off the wall one is Pierce Brosnan. Just look at what he's done with his roles as Bond. I think he could pull off both the prim and proper, the calculating, as well as the misleading warmth that Thrawn has a tendency of pulling off. The non off the wall one, Dr. Gregory House, Hugh Laurie, I think would be perfect for Thrawn. I mean, just look at how he's performed as House. You had both those standpoints that I just mentioned about like the warmth and the calculating and the you see the fury behind the eyes when the fury's there type deal. He's there, very, very expressionist with his facial features, which I think would be very fitting to Thrawn. Those would be my choices. Like I said, Pierce Brosnan's obviously off the wall, but I think he would do a good job of it.
A little low. He's getting up there in years, if we go all the way back to how long he's been on.
Well, you think about it. I mean, this is supposed to be after Return of the Jedi, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, after Jedi. Thrawn would be old. To the new canon, Thrawn's been around since the Clone Wars.
Right, but how long does his race live?
True.
And how long? What starts to show for their age at that point? They still haven't really given us that.
Well, the beauty of it is he's going to be under makeup and everything else anyway, so they could darken his hair and just blue his face, and you probably won't see the wrinkles.
I think it's going to take a little more than that. But
True.
Trust me, it takes a little more.
So many tricks.
When you sit somebody in that chair for hours, every time you want to get rid of a wrinkle, you'd add another hour to their time sitting in the chair. I don't know. I like what Wren said. I see he's able to pull off Jason Isaacs with that. I've seen that glitter in the eye when he's trying to make a teaching moment, even in the Harry Potter series.
Right.
You've seen him lose his cool as Malfoy. And then you've seen him just play like, oh, I'm your best friend, Draco, be nice. You totally know it's not true, but he pulled it off.
Well, what about the other one that has been rumored? Well, not rumored, but fans had been demanding for Thrawn for a while. Tom Middleton.
Oh, Lars's brother.
No.
I don't want to. I think he's going to be a little busy with Loki.
True.
To pick another series up at this time. Kind of the same thing with Benedict Cumberbatch. He's been a big choice online as well. I see him being a little busy since Doctor Strange is going to be such a big part of MCU 4.
Right.
So,
speaking of not Star Wars related, how about the fact that they're bringing back Captain America? Speaking of the MCU.
Well, I saw that one too, and I also saw another one now says Chris Evans addresses rumors. His return as Captain America. So I didn't get a chance to read that. I saw it just before we started the show.
I didn't see that one yet.
I got to check that one out as soon as we're off and see what they're saying. Is he saying no? Because, he was very adamant he wasn't coming back.
True, but the MCU right now in Phase 4 seems like it's just a complete cluster, for lack of a better term. Like everything they wanted to try just isn't working, or at least not panning out with the fan base. Not picking a dog in the fight. I'm not going to get into it. Just, it doesn't seem like Marvel's got the right plan for after Endgame. So
I think they probably did originally, and then I hate to say it, this COVID crap knocked them on their ass, and their release dates just totally out of sync. They're trying to slowly, I think, get back in sync. WandaVision's finally released, but everything was put so far behind in their filming. We just don't know what they're going to be able to do to put it back together. Are they going to hold off until theaters open again? Are they going to go the direct release and try to make their money that way? You're not going to beat ticket sales.
No, you're not going to beat ticket sales, but I also think that the one thing, and I don't say this happily, but I think the one thing COVID did is I think COVID killed theaters. I think they're going to go the way of drive-ins. It's going to be a novelty and not something that's really expected anymore. Most people have big screen TVs, and quite honestly, I'd rather not pay $20 for a cup of coffee and a bucket of popcorn.
buy the ticket only. Just go watch the film.
Yeah, but the ticket itself is $20.
You're talking to a freaking filmmaker here. Quit saying theater's dead. Cinema's dead. You're really making me feel bad.
No, I don't mean to make you feel
Instead,
bad.
my anger is going to come out. I'm going to start force stroking you right through the screen.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that. Especially while I'm drinking.
I think films like MCU films will still do very well in a theater cinema approach. Just
Oh, I
because of
agree.
that.
I agree.
Star Wars will still do well. They'll still drag people out because if they don't release them on direct video, we're only going to do them there. People are going to drag themselves out of bed once the COVID thing is over and go see them.
All right, unrelated. I'll even pitch just to Wren first. Unrelated thought process. Mandalorian season 1 and season 2.
Mm-hmm.
On average, about a half-hour episode, whatever. What would you say if Lucasfilm decided to release them into theater, to be able to go watch them on the big screen, to watch Luke tearing through the hallway like Vader, and Grogu's big, gorgeous eyes and everything else? Would you buy a ticket to go see The Mandalorian on the big screen?
I would, if it were a special release. For example, they were going to play, say, all of season 1 in a massive launch showdown, perhaps as a celebration of the new movie coming out or something.
Okay.
But it would have to be like a event. It wouldn't, I don't think the draw is enough to get me to go and do it just to sit down, watch, it for half an hour and then leave.
Oh, no, I didn't mean a half an hour. I was meaning like either season or they do an all-day marathon of episode 1 to episode 16.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I didn't mean like pay a ticket price to go see a half an hour episode.
Gotcha. Yeah, if it were a special release event where it's exciting, they give the theaters tons of just bling and crap to give out, and they bring in maybe the 501st and people are wearing costumes, and it's like this big, exciting, lively event. That would be fun. I miss the days of Harry Potter events when everyone would just swarm borders. And it was, right? Remember? There was this massive thing. It was so much fun. I could see that.
I agree there. But it would have to be the big deal. And you're going to draw those people that have refused to pay for Disney Plus.
Right.
Haven't seen it. Because now they're going to go, oh, I don't have to pay this every month for a couple of episodes. I could pay $20 once, which has saved me 6 months worth of Disney Plus costs. Now it's cheaper to go see it in the theater for one day and see them all through.
You know what though? I don't see anybody having an issue with Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's been the biggest complaint is Disney Plus being a paid for.
I get the paid for, but I mean it's $5 a month, and I mean there's more than Star Wars on there. You have all the Star Wars stuff, but you got all the Disney stuff that we all grew up with. You got all the Marvel stuff on there.
Well, I have all the Disney stuff I grew up with on DVD and Blu-ray after years before Disney Plus. I for one don't have Disney Plus. I have all the Marvel movies on my own, either as electronic copies or digital downloads or that kind of thing. So,
ooh, are we gonna get a Sith moment and tell us how you watched all 16 episodes of The Mandalorian without Disney Plus?
No, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you. Although, let's just say I have a friend that's able to send them to me maybe a day or two before release.
Nice. I want to meet this friend.
I don't want to lose this friend.
I don't have Disney Plus either, but
which I'm going to say is one way I cheated on War of the Stars when everybody was trying to figure out who was coming to pick up Grogu, and they're all coming up with the Mace Windu's and all these different ideas. I said, I think it's going to be Luke.
You know what? I had stated numerous times on it that I thought Luke was the most
likely.
obvious choice.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to do it the way they did it, but I did expect it to be Luke. However, I was kind of hoping more for Ezra Bridger, especially after, and I based that especially after the Ahsoka episode where she mentioned Thrawn, and the last we knew of Ezra and Thrawn, they went into unknown space together. So
Right.
if one's back, where's the other?
I don't think
It's
that
kind of the deal.
we don't know Ezra's not back, and we really don't know if Thrawn's back. We know she asked about it. I think we're going to probably start the Thrawn series off with that, the return.
So you think Ezra will show up on Ahsoka?
Yeah, first on Ahsoka, because they're saying there's going to be a lot of surprise visits and special appearances on Ahsoka. Is the rumors I've been hearing, and I would not be surprised to see Ezra show up there, and then the Thrawn series kick off.
Oh, so you think there's going to be a Thrawn series?
Oh yeah, I think there's going to be a Thrawn series before we're done. Just too popular of a character, and they've been too. The shows have been leaning too good to the to the light side.
Well, I'll be honest with you. There's something I am expecting. Speaking of characters that are beloved and wanted to return to canon, I think they have a perfect opportunity with this High Republic stuff. I don't know so much about the books and the comics, but do you think it's finally time that we're finally going to get Revan back?
Good question.
I hope so, but that would be during the Old Republic.
Right, and High Republic is the replacement for the Old Republic. At least that's how I understand it. So.
No, it's a different time.
Oh, it is a different time.
Ending when Palpatine takes over. That's the end of the Old Republic.
Right, but we're talking about
the High Republic is multiple generations before that. I mean, there's the High Republic, then it goes into what basically the decline of the High Republic is the Old Republic, in my eyes. From what I'm understanding. How about you, Wren? That seems to be more.
Now you have me wondering. I always saw the Old Republic as being amongst the oldest timeline out there. And if you wanted to go anything older than the Old Republic, you get into things like the proto-sabers. And before there were Sith and Jedi, right? You had the Jetaya. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but
yeah, I'm talking about before they were known as Jedi. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Before they split into Jedi and Sith.
Right.
I'm stuck with Obi-Wan in 77. The Jedi Knights were the protectors of the Old Republic, which we had Jedi. He was a Jedi Knight of the Old Republic. That's how it felt to me. He was saying.
True, but with before the new canon, it basically started with a video game, obviously, Knights of the Old Republic, which took place 4,000 years before the events of A New Hope, and in that timeline is basically the Jedi and Sith wars. In fact, it's before the Sith rule of two, like. Darth Bane, I think it was, who instituted the rule of two, wasn't even an inch in his daddy's pants yet. This was a time where the Sith were more of a race than a religion.
Right.
And I heard some interesting things about that, about the new canon regarding the Sith and the Sith race. Apparently, the original story goes that you had the predecessors to the Jedi, and out of them, 7 of them were dissatisfied. They decided they did not like how things are being run. They wanted to dive deeper into the dark side and explore, and they were ostracized. They were kicked out of the order. So they flew through space, and they ended up out past the Outer Rim into the unknown regions-ish, if I remember right, and they ended up crash landing. And the planet they crash landed on was where the Sith species was. And these people, these aliens, were very violent. They were very harsh, extremely hierarchical race. But when these dark Jedi crash landed there, they realized we got to survive. We got to find some way to make these people work for us. And that's what they did. They figured out how to use the dark side, how to manipulate, and they worked up the Sith hierarchy and basically took control over that society and culture. That was the old version of how the Sith became a thing. Now, the Sith, they do not exist as a species per se. So the new canon is that the Sith is a creed, kind of like how the Mandalorians are not a particular race; they're a creed.
Right.
And I think that should be rather interesting. It does kind of unravel quite a bit of material that's already been created, especially for Knights of the Old Republic, the big MMO game that's on. But I don't think apocalyptically so.
Right.
I mean, so.
Well, how do you feel with both of you? I'll ask a question. With both of you being very dark side oriented when it comes to Star Wars lore, how do you feel about, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like the new canon is sympathizing the Sith more and the dark side, where it's not necessarily, like when you think back to 77 and everything Lucas had done, the Sith were just the ultimate evil. The dark side was evil. You tap into this, you're evil. And now it's being more portrayed, at least from what I could see, as like, no, I just don't like the rules of the Jedi. Like, obviously people fall to the dark side, they wind up becoming evil, but the idea of the dark side itself and the what used to be the ultimate bad guys are now more sympathetic to the fact of like, well, they just went against the status quo.
Wow. I don't necessarily see it.
I have so much to say on that.
I'm not just a
waiting.
Sith lover. I'm an Imperial. I definitely like the order of the dark side.
Okay.
That side of the house. I don't see them in the sequels we've seen, making the Sith seem better. I think, if anything, they tried to make them pathetic, especially in The Rise of Skywalker.
Well, I think the only one that was made to be like the ultimate evil in Sith would be Palpatine. Yeah, you're right. Kylo was more kind of what I was describing, somebody who just,
even the Sith, the quote Sith in the auditorium around him. Very pathetic. They had to hide out all these years, and they helped build this fleet. And they're not even the ones manning it. It's still Imperial troops, Imperial Navy. They're going to be left behind, once Palpatine's done with them.
right.
So very pathetic is how I feel that the sequels made them.
Fair enough. What about you, Ren? You said you had a lot to do. By the way, there's 4 minutes left before this stream drops. So, well, what I was going to say, if you guys are up for it, when it drops, I can reinstitute the thing for a second part, and we just two-parter this. So, if it drops and you guys want to continue doing it, let me know, and I will resend a new, hey, let's do this, type deal.
Sounds good to me, Joe.
Yeah, I can do another 30 minutes easily.
Okay, cool. Well, then, with the 3 minutes and 30 seconds left, Rem, why don't you go ahead and get started on what you wanted to say?
Okay. I haven't read the book, but apparently in the version of the story that's in the book, all of those characters, those dark-robed characters hanging out around Palpatine, they weren't Sith. They were
or something, right?
Yeah, they were a race of people who worshipped the Sith, almost like gods or demigods.
Like the Guardians of the Wills that we got introduced to in Rogue One.
Yeah, they're kind of exactly. Yeah, they're servants. They're not of the Sith, creed per se. So they were basically just a bunch of expendables. But that was never really even hinted at in the movie, and I could see where a lot of people who aren't already familiar with the stories being really confused about, like, what are all these people? I've heard some folks think that it was the actual, like, manifestation of all the Sith spirits inside of Palpatine just kind of showing up around the that throne room, which wasn't really what was happening. And I feel like, and I'm probably going to be very unpopular for saying this, but the rule of two, as it was played out in the movie, it starts to break down after a certain point, because, if all the Sith are in one Sith, Palpatine, and you kill Palpatine, that's basically the end of the character. The same with Rey, who is all of the Jedi. When she dies, technically speaking, that's the end of the story. So you can't really have that actually be the end of the story. What I think is that the rule of two would be much better played out as being almost like a cult, because during the Old Republic and in the Old Republic game, there were many different kinds of Sith cults and Sith sects that believed in all kinds of weird things, and they were led by these charismatic, manipulative leaders that just sucked people in and started controlling them and getting them to just almost quasi-worship them. And I see that happening in the Rule of Two, where in the Book of the Sith, it talks about Sith actually killing themselves so that their essence can go to their master and make their master more powerful and rise above everyone else and that sort of thing. That sounds like a great cult kind of thing to build stories around. Maybe have Sith join with Jedi, God forbid, to try to tackle these cults. I mean, it makes for a great juicy story. But to have that be the only story, I think it falls apart after a certain point.
All right, and we will be back in a few minutes just to wrap this up. But until then, guys, enjoy this commercial, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Dave from the Comic Collection, the ultimate comic store here in Feasterville, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Northeast Philadelphia. Come and see all of the great stuff we have here at the Comic Collection, including action figures, vinyl, CDs, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, back issues, action figures, old action figures as well, statues, and of course, let's not forget comic books. Come visit us at the Comic Collection at 83 Bustleton Pike, Feasterville, PA 19053, right next to Northeast Philadelphia. Come visit us. We'll look forward, and yes, we are open during this pandemic thing.
Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that little break of commercials, and now let's get back into it. Wren, you were saying.
Oh yes, my rant about the Rule of Two. So I think it's great to use it as a cult sort of thing, as a part of Sith culture as a whole. But the way it's been portrayed so far, I think it's just well, for one thing, it loses interest to me, because it's like, well, that's all she wrote, yeah. And the genre isn't going to do that. I much prefer the Old Republic view of the Sith, where they are this culture, and in there they have all different kinds of things. They have all these cults and leaders. Some of them, well, let's face it, most of them are probably kind of sketchy, but they're individuals. So, and this flows into what you asked earlier, where how do we feel about the new image of the Sith as not being the ultimate bad guys in the universe? And I think that's a good thing, in that it gives way more diversity and flexibility to that character type. So you could have Sith that are completely psychotic and horrible and nasty and the best villains that you can come up with. But you could also have Sith that are reasonable. And I think that gives you so much ammunition for stories, any which way you want it to go. It's great. And as a cosplayer and as a gamer, I think that's one of the best character type that you could have, where you can be that horrible, psychotic, evil character in Knights of the Old Republic. You just pick all the nasty, the meanest, cruelest traces you could possibly, gender that the game has, and you can see where that leads you, and you can go really crazy and horrible, or you can play a Sith who's fairly reasonable and see where the game takes you. And the game does give you feedback. I've had NPCs kind of give a double take and say, well, you're very unusual for your kind. And that was fun for me. I've played both. I've played horrible, evil, nasty, and I've played reasonable on the dark side. And horrible, evil, nasty is your pretty typical horrible, evil, nasty. I mean, everyone is a slave to you, and that's pretty much it. It's very, expected. But when you play one that's reasonable, you get a lot of interesting reactions. And I hope this isn't a spoiler for people, but there's a moment where one of your character companions talks to you, kind of brings you aside, and this is a companion side quest. And I played it so that my character, who was a Sith Marauder, she helped Vet in one of the quests, and I did it in such a way that was pretty decent. And Vet said to my character, and it was a very nice cutscene. It was actually about maybe almost 2-minute long cutscene, which was pretty unique. Right. And she said, I wish the rest of the universe could see you as I see you, as I have known you, and they would have a very different opinion of the Sith. And that took me by surprise. I did not think a video game would go there.
Right.
And that was really cool. And I hope we're kind of headed into those waters, because I think it will open up some really great stories.
Well, to sum up what you were saying, and the best way for comparison for people that may be more layman in Star Wars lore than us who are pretty much obsessed with it. The best way to describe it is like Darth Bane's Rule of Two is like a sect of the Sith, very similar to the ideals of Death Watch as opposed to the Mandalorians. They're still Mandalorians, but they have a different way of viewing Mandalorian creed and power and political points and stuff like that. Kind of Bane's Sith were the same way, just kind of like a radicalized version of the Sith.
Well,
is that basically what you're saying?
When you look at it another way, prequels, we had no rule of two.
Right.
There was no rule of two in all the Legends books before the prequels. There were Sith all over the place, not just Palpatine or Vader. There were others that were Sith or Sith-like.
Most of which clones with an extra letter in her name.
Yeah, I kind of like the way you said it, because that reminded me more of the prequel, the EU before.
Right.
You got the prequels in this Rule of Two. Sith were much more varied. They were all over the place. You had half Sith, kind of like Mara Jade in the Thrawn trilogy. She was the Emperor's hand. You had Palpatine actually thinking he was doing the universe a favor, because his whole point of he had to rule with this iron fist as a Sith was, the worst set of EU books, but preparing the galaxy for the Vong invasion.
The Yuuzhan Vong, yeah.
Yeah, that's why he was building these massive, planet killers and sun-destroying weapons, because he knew regular weapons wouldn't affect, would be more less effective against them than they were. Than other weapons. So, super Star Destroyers instead of just Star Destroyers. And, and they talk about that. Maybe this is what he was seeing. He had foreseen a darkness coming to the galaxy. So even then, you're giving Palpatine a little credit. Okay, he just saw this was the only way he could do it, but he was seeing these in his Force visions. And as far as them being gone, I just look at it as, Palpatine died, but we still have all those Sith Force ghosts, or they're out there, absorbed into temples and everything else like we saw in the Legends books.
I'm going to piss so many people off with this question. I really am. But just because Rey right now in canon, and actually I wanted to discuss the sequel trilogy and the petitions and everything else going around. But before we get into that, with Rey being all the Jedi and Palpatine being all the Sith, do you think it's fair to say that the Sith aren't dead with Palpatine, and maybe like the all the Sith energy or whatever would parasite into a new user down the line?
Well,
and the way I'm going to piss everybody off, to give a visualization, kind of like the story of Jason in the Jason Goes to Hell movie.
I look at it as more the Jedi weren't all in there with her. They said, we're here with you. They weren't absorbed by her.
Right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have had Luke and Leia as Force ghosts at the end. They would have been in her head completely, and they showed up as separate ghosts. They weren't embedded in her. They all came and lent their aid as Force ghosts. And we know because they showed Yoda still being able to manipulate the Force as a Force ghost.
Right. But that's the light side. What about the dark?
Well, the dark side, if you go by the rule of two, that's not a whole lot of guys in there. When you think about it. But even they broke the rule of two in canon many times in the prequels.
True.
Because if you look at the timelines, he had Dooku and Maul going at it based on how long Dooku had left the Order. And then he was already working on Anakin before he really lost Dooku. Okay, well, Anakin, it's time for you to step up, so kill him. Kind of an attitude.
Well,
I think it's more like the Jedi. As a Sith user, while he was alive, he was able to manipulate them and control their power. And I'm going to say now that he's gone, they're back to more Jedi-ish, waiting for somebody else to assume the throne or the mantle.
Well, one thing I did just think about that kind of contradicts Wren's statement with the Knights of the Old Republic, with the way I've always viewed like the Sith and the hierarchy of the Sith. I think even then they were kind of showing a bit of the rule of two. When you think of like Darth Revan and Darth Malak, for example, they were the only Darths. They were the only Dark Lords of the Sith. Everybody else was more Dark Jedi. In fact, their character names were Dark Jedi or Dark Jedi Assassin or whatever. Do you think that maybe like the rule of two before Bane's bastardization of it was that there was always two Sith Lords and then everybody else was Sith in training? Because I've always took it as like the Dark Jedis just weren't Sith yet. And I also based that on the Jedi Knight series, Jedi Outcast and Jedi Knight 3.
I like that theory a little better. Because I'm a child of the original trilogy, we didn't even hear about what a Sith was until like number 3.
Right.
Return of the Jedi. What's a Sith? These are just dark guys who can use the power too. And we didn't know if there were any others.
Right.
We kept wondering, okay, what about the Red Guard? The Imperial Guard. Are they Force users? They didn't show that in the originals, but we had to have our own imaginations kicking in here. Because if they're here to guard the Emperor, they must be badasses.
Absolutely.
If he relies on bodyguards, and he's the ultimate dark.
Well, the bodyguards and everything, if I remember from the EU Legends and all that, Palpatine was very paranoid. He started basically seeing assassins around every corner, to take him out. That's why he locked himself in the Imperial Castle and had bodyguards. I mean, he even had the air filtered
Well, he
into
wasn't really
into his area.
Vader was really trying.
No, Vader was.
Join me, Luke. I can't do it alone. Come on, son. Let's go take him out.
And of course, while you're doing the legends, you also have Vader's assassin, which is another character everybody wants to have apparently become canon. Star Killer, who I'm failing to remember what his real name was.
I can't remember. I'd love to see more Emperor hands. Because Thrawn, when Mara Jade thought she was really misimportant, I was the Emperor's hand. He goes, "You were one of the hands." In the books, and she's like, "What?"
Hey, look.
I was it. What are you talking about? No, he had lots of hands.
Hey, look, I'm not pissing on the current canon. I'm not. And, just to show that we're not all EU loyalists in any way, shape, or form, the EU screwed up many times too. The Yuzan Vog we mentioned earlier, Chewie getting killed by a moon.
Yeah. Don't even go there.
As it collapsed down on him.
Yeah. There were some stinkers in there too. Rogue Planet is the first book that comes to mind.
We got the host of Thrawn, so we could see things like the Emperor's hands and that kind of.
Right.
And if they start bringing that more into, especially now they're having Zahn write more, and Disney's approving and Lucasfilm are approving these new novels. Are these new novels going to be canon? If so, Thrawn returns long before the events in The Mandalorian.
Well, as far as I understand it, yeah, Zahn's books are canon. So,
well, there you go.
Got a point there.
Vader. He's with Darth Vader in these books. That's Thrawn alliances right there. So
that is true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
So you've got some. She's going to be really upset if she finds out that he, was killed right after Return of the Jedi by his own bodyguard. Ahsoka's going to be like, "What? I didn't get to take him out."
Well, speaking of Ahsoka, you had brought up something before we started recording part 2 here about the casting credits to Ahsoka, and you brought up something that was very, very tasty.
Yeah, I did a little research and sent off a couple of emails, and then was told, go look at IMDb for under Ahsoka. And so far, she is the only character cast, although we have two writers that are now listed as cast under cast and crew. Of course, we all knew Filoni was going to be there as writing, and that's him listed as writing an episode.
Well, I mean, Ahsoka's his baby, so.
The big surprise was George Lucas's photo and name popping up saying one episode.
So that's it, folks. You heard it here. George Lucas is writing at least one of the episodes of Ahsoka.
Which explains all the time he's been spending on the Mandalorian set these last few months.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Lucasfilm is finally getting it? You can't really control this without Lucas?
Well, as long as they control Lucas. Because if you ask me, the prequels were just a bunch of people because he owned all the companies, too afraid to tell him, no, that's a bad idea.
Of course, you're talking about Jar Jar Binks.
No, midichlorians are bad ideas.
I got the idea for midichlorians. I agree it was a bad idea, but I get the reasoning behind it. They wanted to be able to project to you how powerful Anakin was in a quantifiable way.
It was the worst possible.
It was the worst possible way to explain it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the Force is a blood virus.
And we had the whole discussion about, what happens if somebody sticks you full of antivirals and antibiotics? Do you suddenly kill off the midichlorians?
Keep me out of the bacta tanks.
There was that. There was the Jar Jar was a bad idea, but nobody wanted to say, George, no. Every time he brought up one of these new ideas, everybody around him was, no, great job, George, because they wanted their check on Friday. I mean, he owned Lucasfilm. He owned ILM. He owned, Skywalker. Who was going to tell him no? He
True.
was the boss.
There was a very interesting moment, speaking of George Lucas and John, where have you watched the Mandalorian documentary series?
No, I did not.
I highly recommend fans, you guys, everyone, if you're interested in Mandalorian and Star Wars in general, to watch that documentary series because it gave really interesting insight into George and where he's coming from versus where John is coming from. Because there was one moment in there where they were discussing the Mandalorian himself, that one character, and they're talking about his long range rifle, the one that has like the V-shaped
Mhm.
handle to it. And John was mentioning that the character idea that he got originally came from the Mandalorian cartoon.
Right.
And the shape of that long rifle came from that cartoon. And he was telling George this very excitedly, like, hey, it's a fantastic weapon. And it was your idea. It's literally like a carbon copy of this cartoon. And he saw the cartoon as being like a stylized version of how he imagined, right? Like a live action show. And John's all excited, and George is just sitting there shaking his head. And he just says in a very snappy tone, that wasn't mine. I had nothing to do with that.
You know
The
why,
car-
don't you?
The cartoon.
You know why, don't you? Because the cartoon was attached to something that has haunted George since 1978, and that is the holiday special.
Oh,
And you know what's really bad about the holiday
Yep.
special? I
Uh,
stayed up late in '78 to watch that.
I was going to say what was bad about it was Grandpa Chewy sitting there watching porn on his little Oculus lenses.
yeah.
It just.
But it was a great interaction because you saw John's reaction to George when George said that.
So crestfallen.
And if you pay attention to all the episodes leading up to that one, John was very much, he was saying out of how he is a George Lucas's version of Star Wars follower. Like he's all about that vision, George's vision, George. But then when it comes to that point in the documentary where they were talking about the Mandalorian and how that design came about, and George was just like, no, you saw this look come over John, like, oh, maybe you're not everything after all. And the tone from that point on would really change. And that's when they started talking about, well, instead of looking at the original materials of Star Wars and trying to basically carbon copy a 1970s style of science fiction storytelling, we're going to look at what inspired that story. We're going to look at the samurai culture. We're going to look at the warrior cultures from many different parts of the world. We're going to look at the base material that inspired George. And I thought that was a very interesting approach.
Well,
So,
I mean, John Favreau and Dave Filoni are huge Lucas fans. I mean, I've watched the round table where Dave Filoni was sitting down with a bunch of directors that were supposed to be doing, some of the I think Mandalorian shows, and he was describing George's vision and what the movies were and what they meant to George and the overall message that George wanted to see preserved within Star Wars, which was simply make these movies hopeful. I remember how passionate Dave was in describing that, and like you were saying, you watch the other directors' faces, and you see them getting it. Like, wow, there's a lot more power to this than just wizards in space. And
I'll tell you about a round table I had one time with my younger brother, who was there at the same time. He was in 5th grade and I was in 6th grade. And the very nice lady across the street called us both over and to come inside her house because she had somebody there for us to meet. And his name was George Lucas.
no way.
Yes, way. She knew that we were huge fans because we washed her car and we called her Auntie Avenel and all this neat stuff. And just in case you don't realize where I'm from, I live in Modesto, California.
Right.
George's hometown. My mom went to high school with him. He was a freshman nerd. She didn't like him. But I'll tell you, he sat down and probably talked to us for 10 minutes. And I got to hear this. We got to hear the story about what later became Mustafar, where Luke's dad was killed by Darth Vader in the volcano.
Right.
In a lightsaber duel, which later got switched around, and because after he came out with Empire and Jedi, he had to make it that Vader was his dad, so it had been switched around even that quickly from 77. And he signed the back of her recipe cards. She had some blank recipe cards. It says from the kitchen of Avenel Harris on the front. And on the back, may the force be with Joe, may the force be with you, George Lucas. They
Nice.
those to commemorate. So he basically had all 9 episodes at one point in his head.
Right.
Ready to go. And that just shows in, a few short years, it went from being Luke's dad killed by Vader in the volcano to Obi-Wan and Vader, Vader becoming his dad. We still didn't know how that had happened.
Well, it's just like
point of view, but that was the same kind of thing. So that's really when I got out of the service. Did a couple of small acting roles, and they said, "Nah, crap, I'm getting behind the camera when I retire," and that's what I've gone and done now. It's just much easier back here.
Well, I think it's fair to say that Star Wars, yeah, he had all 9 episodes from gate. At least the ideals of them, the outlines of them. But I think it's safe to say that Star Wars has always been a living script. Like, it's always, and the perfect example is Empire Strikes Back with Leia kissing Luke. Yes, that one that everybody likes to meme and talk shit on. You got to remember, back when that was recorded and released, they weren't brother and sister. That was never the plan. But the script evolved. And so you could still excuse it as they didn't know.
In a slight twisted way. You understand why he thought she was hot, because he saw her every day in the mirror.
Right.
And vice versa. But of course, she was using it just to bug Han at that point.
Exactly. And at that point, neither of them knew that they were related.
Right. Poor Luke was still, getting all excited about the kissing.
So many people got so upset over that to this day, and it's like, you know what? Look, how
it's so much worse in TV these days.
Not just that. It's like how many times have we heard stories of people finding out they're cousins or something that they never knew were related to each other?
Game of Thrones, aunt and nephew.
Yeah, so
she was all, let's keep going here, Mr. Nephew, but he was like, no, we really shouldn't be doing that no more.
And I mean, it was just a peck. There was no tongue. It's not like they were kicking the droids out of the room and everything else. I mean, come on. Speaking of kicking the droids out of the room, this is something that's been bugging me, and I've been wanting to sit down and have a full-on conversation with, is the hate of the sequel trilogy. Now, I'm not saying that people have to like or dislike the sequel trilogy. I'm not saying that. My dog in this is that people have been demanding and doing petitions and everything else to have 7, 8, and 9 completely stricken and considered non-canon and reshot. Now, I'll get your guys' opinion, but I'll tell you briefly my opinion. No, don't do it. The best way to handle it is, if you're not happy with the way the Skywalker saga ended, do 3 more movies. Do 10, 11, and 12. Finish off the story the right way. The reason I state that is not because I think the movies were great. No, I don't. I thought they were okay, and I enjoy them for what they are, but they're not my favorite Star Wars films. But this is the final performance of Carrie Fisher, Kenny Baker, Peter Mayhew. You're going to erase their legacy just because you didn't like the film? What do you guys think? I mean, should people just let sleeping dogs lie, or do you think they have a right to complain that these movies need to be removed?
From a filmmaker's point of view, when I make 3 films that between them make about $6 billion. I don't care how many petitions they signed. Those films were successful. Everybody went and saw them, and more than once, to make that kind of money.
Right.
We've discussed this a lot on the War of the Stars. There is a small vocal group of quote fans that are more Star Wars haters than lovers.
Right.
They watch everything looking for a way to criticize, throw a fit, say not my Star Wars. We have a saying on War of the Stars, any Star Wars is better than no Star Wars.
Agreed.
So go away, shut your mouth. If you don't enjoy it, fine, leave us alone. We do. I saw Solo twice. Not my favorite film. If I had no other Star Wars to see, you're darn tootin' I'd watch Solo if I had nothing else available. Because just having Star Wars in my life has been important to me for, 40 years. Plus, for me, I was sixth grade when I saw 77. So
I was 5 months old.
Well, yeah, we can all have been there.
I was there.
You'll also note, Wren, and I know you know this, I never say A New Hope. I always refer to it as Star Wars or Star Wars 77. Because it didn't get the name New Hope forever.
Until Empire.
No, it was still just Star Wars at that point. Then it became Star Wars was very small print on the poster of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Those were all standalone titles.
Right, you're right. It didn't get episode 4 until Empire because Empire was episode 5. But yeah, I think it was the special edition re-releases in '97 is where they gave it the New Hope title.
Gave it the New Hope title, and so many of us were mad because that just sucked.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with all of them having a title, so that way the whole entire thing is Star Wars.
But the whole thing is Star Wars was originally a standalone thing.
Because he didn't think he'd have the money to do the other two.
He didn't think he'd be making any kind of money off of it. Although he was a genius, like telling 20th Century Fox, you give me this much money and the merchandising rights, and I'll leave you alone. This much money, and they said, "Oh, okay, duh." That's when the first time you ever saw merchandising go crazy for a film. But
I still love.
That's going to be my closing. So, what about you, Wren? What was your original question?
The original question was, how do you feel about the call for removal of 7, 8, 9 from canon?
No, leave alone. They've been printed.
Wren?
Oh, sorry. You cut out there for a minute.
Oh, sorry.
I agree with you guys. I think it's amazing to me that the fans would want those movies removed when it's the last performances of these actors and actresses that were there from the beginning. Boy, I feel like there comes a point where you just have to accept, okay, the Skywalker storyline didn't end the way that I wanted it to. But that's just the beginning. I mean, Disney is going to be making so much content. I suspect we're probably going to get the High Republic movies. We know the Acolyte is being produced, and that's most definitely probably occurring in the Old Republic or a Old Republic-esque timeline. I know John in one of the interviews said that he doesn't like to look at everything as being a singular linear timeline. He likes to look at it as being groups of stories.
Right.
And I know that just makes a lot of fans cringe and curl up, but why limit yourself so severely to sticking with one timeline, because over 40 years has already passed and it's still a strong genre. So you don't want people to be hampered creating a story because a fictional event occurred 30 years ago, but because you got to adhere to the timeline, it's extremely restrictive. And I let the Skywalker story go. It's over. That whole thing has been told and said and done. And if you're a fan, and if you don't like the story, create fan fiction.
I don't think the Skywalker story's done. I've got 2 words for you: Jake Skywalker. They could go there.
They could. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. I'm looking forward to new characters, like really new characters, really fresh characters. And I think the reason why I feel that way is I'm coming more from the video game perspective of things, where a lot of the lore that we know, including the Sith Creed, was written for the video game industry. So, and it's one of the reasons why the books and the movies and the video games don't always mesh that great with each other. Perfect example, where did Rey get the kyber crystal that makes a yellow blade?
Yeah.
Where did she get the yellow kyber? I mean, to me, that was a glaring problem in the story, but that's my problem, because I'm familiar with kyber lore and I love it and I know all about it. But to your casual movie watcher, and like, oh, that's pretty, that's a nice shade of yellow or amber.
I'll tell you what, like, I agree with you. I remember the original Legends explanation of kyber crystals. I actually liked the idea of the Sith putting their hatred and their anger and basically torturing the crystal until it bleeds, and that's what causes the red lightsaber. I actually like that better than the synthetic explanation of the red lightsaber being a false crystal that was manufactured instead of naturally grown. However, you're right, they haven't really described why some lightsabers are blue, some are green, and how Rey got a yellow. For personal fan fiction purposes, I think all kyber crystals are white, and who you are is reflected in the blade.
Mm-hmm.
That's the simplest enough explanation for me.
Hence the purple Mace Windu.
Purple Mace Windu, because he walked that line. And he's just a BAMF.
Yeah. They got to bring him back. We talked about that. There's a character you can bring back.
I hope so.
Nobody said
I hope so.
He fell out the window. Once he got the pain under control, he had a long drop. He could have slowed himself down with the Force. An easy glide landing, going, mother,
He lands on Sebulba's speeder again, like Anakin in Episode 2.
But even back to getting rid of them, no, it's not going to happen. Disney made just on the last movie $1 billion, but they haven't even stopped earning money on it because they're still earning revenue everywhere.
Right.
As long as Lucasfilm can bring them that kind of money, it's fine. And you can't get rid of, Carrie Fisher. Sorry, that's been my princess since '77.
Right.
Disney, and fans, this was the last time we got to see her in that role. Even if we had to see her as Mary Poppins.
It's funny how many people bitch so much about like Mary Poppins or Mary Sue Ray or whatever else, and I think my biggest complaint in all of Star Wars is L337. It really is. Like, I could tolerate Jar Jar over L337.
I could tolerate Jar Jar over space bombers.
You know what? I want to settle this once and for all. This space bomber hatred thing, talking about like they wouldn't continue momentum in the vacuum of space. That's wrong. Okay, let me fill this out for you. We saw from
as a Navy weapons officer, you better get this right, because I'm going to explain to you why you're wrong all the way through.
All right, well let me give it before you blast me for it. We saw from the sister, Rose's sister, that the bay was, for lack of a better term, pressurized. Okay, it had gravity and everything else where the bombs were, right?
Okay.
So when they released the bombs, they would already start their momentum thanks to gravity pull. Once they passed outside of the ship, which is where they made their mistake, I think they should have put a little blue veil showing a force field or something like that that they had to pass through, so that way you had the separation of artificial gravity to vacuum space. But once they pass through that, there is no friction to stop the bombs from going on their projected course. They would have dropped straight down. If the ship wasn't there, it would have gone straight to the planet or whatever else it could have hit. It's not like we're talking about they dropped out and went this way or something like that. They literally just dropped straight down with the momentum from the artificial gravity.
And what motion was the ship doing that artificial gravity presented?
What do you mean?
The ship itself that had the artificial gravity was moving in one direction.
Okay.
So upon release, even with the gravity, they're going to go down at an angle. Not straight down, because they're still going to be going at the momentum of the ship as well as the push down.
All right. Fair enough. I'll give you the angle bit. I'll give you the angle bit, but the idea of it being a stupid idea.
They're so damn slow.
Yeah, they were slow and I'm not saying they weren't stupid. I'm just saying the argument is invalid that the bombs would have like stopped moving down and just floated there in space. They wouldn't have done that.
If they'd had a little propulsive system on them, it would have made much more sense.
Right, propulsion system, or like I said with the gravity argument, if they would have just done the force field blue veil at the bottom of the release, that would have explained it enough.
Again, then the planet would have grabbed a hold of him and pulled him away from any ships. Because it would have been the largest gravity source in the area.
True.
He would have said, hey, come here, little bombs. Yeah, just a horrible idea, horrible concept. And they made such a big deal about losing the bombers.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. You cost us those bombers. Very important crap. Why?
But on that note,
the slowest dang pace ever.
But on that note, guys, we are out of time. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. Real quick, Joe, tell everybody about War of the Stars and where they can find them.
You can find War of the Stars on Get Vocal, on Twitch TV, and everywhere else that great podcasting is available. Anchor FM, that type of thing. You can also catch me on One Crit Blunders, podcasting Dungeons and Dragons show, as well as, what is it, The Gods? You just got me involved in this one.
Legends of the Forgotten Gods.
That's the one. I just started playing that one last week. So you can catch me there. You can also find me on Facebook at Joe Cahill, Director Producer, or Steamhouse Entertainment. Please check both those out and some of the projects we're working on now, like The Last Battleship and the Fifth Legion. Thanks.
Nice.